This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. Welcome to the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm your host, co-founder and editorial director of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, Jamie Bogner. This is episode 221 of the podcast, and I am coming from you from Denver, Colorado, not too far from home. Joining me is Jan Chodkowski from our mutual friend right here in the River North district of Denver. Welcome to the podcast, Jan.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
We were talking before we started the podcast. I don't know why we haven't done this one yet. I think it just has to do with me metering out some of our Colorado folks that are closer to home. But our mutual friend has lit things up over the last number of years here in Denver. By my count, 5 GABF medals, World Beer Cup medal. I mean, you scored a 99 last year with Times Arrow Double IPA in our Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine IPA issue, Craft Beer and Brewing Beer of the Year last year. I mean, there's some accolades that you guys have stacked back on that, and you've done it across a whole bunch of styles, everything from hoppy beers to farmhouse ales, saison, mixed culture beers. And you're doing some creative stuff. One of my favorite beers you make is a smoked beer.
We do those too. Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about all of these, approaches to brewing, from mixed culture to hoppy beers and some of the more experimental stuff that you've been getting into, and maybe even a little smoked beer too, because, hey, we don't talk about it that much, and it'll be fun to do. Can't wait to get through this conversation. But first, for nearly 30 years, G&D Chillers has set the mark for quality equipment you can rely on. G&D stands above the rest as the only chiller manufacturer that engineers your glycol piping for free. G&D also stands alone as the only chiller manufacturer with an in-house team of installers and engineers with 30 years of real-world field labor experience in breweries, wineries, and distilleries. Contact the Total Glycol System Design experts today at gdchillers.com. Also, this episode is brought to you by BSG and RAR Malting Company, the home of fossil-free malt. RAR's headquarters in Shakopee, Minnesota is powered by renewable electricity. Malt houses and kilns are fed by an electrostatic boiler fueled by agricultural byproducts, much of which is waste from the malting process. By eliminating the use of natural gas, RAR Malting Company reduces CO2 emissions by 260,000 tons per year, while filling 25% of the U.S. brewing industry's malt needs. Put the power of RAR malt in your beer at go.bsgcraft.com/contact-us. So, Jan, we normally start the podcast off talking about background. Give us the background on you, your arc into brewing, and then, of course, how our mutual friend got its start and, grew to where it is today.
Yeah, for sure. So, personally, I was a home brewer. For sure, homebrewer back in the day, and had been working as like a project manager for a house painting company, and had a couple months off every winter to try to get my foot in the door at any brewery that would let me. And then there were very few breweries in Denver and the surrounding area that could actually hire anybody. So I just ended up befriending Brandon, my now business partner, and he gave me a shot at the front of house, and then I started working for free in the back. And, many years later, I'm head brewer and partner here at our mutual friend.
That's it was just like that.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah, totally. Just like that. Real short and simple.
This is your first pro brewing gig?
Yeah, first and only. Making the most of it.
Sure. What got you interested in beer, in the first place?
Oh, that's a great question. I had moved out from upstate New York to Colorado to Breckenridge, and I turned 21 in Breckenridge, and just being exposed to, just craft beer at the liquor stores up in Summit County, just trying new different things. Just was always enjoying beer, but then being able to just try the, vast swath of, different styles and everything that craft beer has to offer just like captivated me pretty instantly. Yeah. And so homebrewed through my 20s, and then started working here when I was about 27. Yeah.
And here it is. How, as you all got OMF off the ground, every brewery starts with an idea and then becomes the thing that it's going to become.
Yeah,
and
totally.
sometimes those things don't align in the way that the vision, seemed to. What's that journey been like for our mutual friend?
Yeah, so the original founders of the brewery, they had a lot of cool ideas that were just kind of maybe too hard to implement at the small size they were. The brewery started on a 1 barrel, then went to a 3, and then to a 7 barrel Frankenbrew style with a dairy mash tun. And now we're on a 10 barrel fully plumbed ABS system, which is a beautiful thing. But just realizing, like what is actually possible on a 1 and a 3 barrel, like you can have all these grand ideas of like, okay, maybe we'll malt some of our own stuff, or we did roast some of our own grains for a super long time. But at this point, we're too large to even roast our own grains. We'd just be smoking out the brew house all day, every day, just to make, 100 pounds of dark malt or something like that. So those kind of fun ideas that are super creative and really interesting and fun to try just as you scale, just even slightly. We're still a small brewery. Some of those things you have to adjust and maybe leave behind as you grow.
Sure. I do, even now the brewery has still grown organically.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I still remember walking through the brew house years ago. This is actually the second podcast that we've recorded here at our mutual friend. The first one was Dave from Fort George that we recorded back there.
Shout out to Dave.
Yeah, shout out. But I still remember, separate glycol, small, glycol chillers powering each one of the, the fermenters in the back there.
Totally.
It's been very much a invest what you can when you can.
Yeah, completely. We're very cautious with growth and stuff. We don't take on a whole lot of debt as a brewery. And we were just adding, tanks and what we could when we could, just to make more beer. Let's see here. I'm thinking back. It was 2020. Yeah, we got the new brew house online right before the pandemic. So we're like feeling great about everything. And we're like, all right, we've got all this, finally correct equipment. And the pandemic hits.
Oof.
Yeah, luckily the brew house and everything was paid for. So we were able to make it through.
Well, you won your first GABF medal in 2015, and then another one in 17, and then another one in 2022, including a gold, in 2021. You won a 2018 World Beer Cup for Saison Tristero. I mean, so even with this small cobbled together, kind of setup, working on, some equipment that may seem less than ideal, you've been able to make beer that have stood out among, in competitive brewing landscape. Yeah,
we definitely, that was a badge of honor for us for when bigger breweries would come into the brew house and be like, you guys do this on what you have here. Sure. It's like, yeah, totally. It's possible for sure. You just got to, work with what you got, make the best of it, which we've done for a long time and we continue to do. Yeah.
So it sounds like things started off with this idea of being creative and small, and that seems to be something that you all have just leaned into, pretty hard.
Yeah, definitely. We like to brew, whatever we're into. We really just like to brew beer we drink, and just try to be, true to ourselves in the beer and how we present ourselves. We don't really know how to do anything else. This isn't, like some huge marketing ploy by us.
Sure,
this is just kind of us putting ourselves out there.
And yet here you are in River North, kind of hip, young, hospitality focused district of Denver, surrounded by a lot of breweries. Bierstadt Lager House is just down the street. Ratio is right up here. Finn's Manor is within, a couple of blocks of you. You've got all Odell's got their brew house right next to Finn's. There's a lot.
Yeah, Colorado Sake Company, one of the few sake producers in the country.
There's a lot of beverage producers and a lot of craft beverage producers and craft beverage retailers here in this River North district. So, competitive spot to be in, and you've got a beautifully muraled outdoor space. It feels fun and urban and hip, and I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of your average 20-something who's popping into Rhino to meet a friend for a beer, and then they see your menu with mixed culture saisons and smoked blonde ale.
We're tossing them to the deep end real fast.
Yeah,
that's the idea. Yeah,
but how do you sell that beer? in this kind of market. I mean, we don't normally talk about that piece of it,
Yeah.
but I mean, there is that question of making what you love to make and making those things that inspire you, but figuring out how to connect those things to people that actually buy the beer is also super important if you want to, stay in business and all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think we do a good job of, incorporating as much local ingredients. I feel like that's a huge component. So if like somebody who's not used to a new style or something, at least that's kind of a jumping up. They're hyper local and using almost exclusively all Colorado malt, using a lot of Colorado hops as well. And then we do a really good job educating our front of house staff on styles and getting them interested in the beer that we're interested in as well. And so, they might not be a smoked beer lover. Our front of house staff might not be a smoked beer lover when they come in here, but they sure do appreciate what we're doing and are able to kind of convey that to customers who are curious as well.
And it's not like, the flavors in smoked beer are alien to people. You're right next to Owlbear Barbecue.
Yeah,
and that's a common reason why people might come, grab
Yep.
some barbecue, drink some beer here.
Yep.
And so, a little smoked beer. They go, I mean, it doesn't feel weird, but at the same time, trying to sell people on smoked beer and this kind of vacuum kind of thing always, feels like an odd proposition. Yeah.
It is. It can be at sometimes, but they're not on tap everywhere. So I feel like people who are curious and try new beers or haven't had smoked beers before, we're a place that they can come and, hopefully try some decent examples of them.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about how you make some of these and have designed some of these, specific beers. But before we do that, looking for innovation in your next beverage breakthrough, think outside the puree box and let your brand stand out with Old Orchard's craft concentrate blends. Even smoothie seltzers can benefit from the extra boost of flavor and color. Old Orchard is based in the greater Grand Rapids, Michigan area, also known as Beer City, USA, and supplies craft beverage categories ranging from beer, wine, and cider to seltzer, spirits, and kombucha. To join the core of Old Orchard's brewing community, learn more at oldorchard.com/brewer. Also, Brew Monitor from Precision Fermentation is the first real-time comprehensive fermentation monitoring solution. It works with your existing fermentation tanks to track dissolved oxygen, pH, gravity, pressure, temperature, and conductivity in real time from any smartphone, tablet, or PC. Brew Monitor provides detailed insight into your fermentations that helps improve beer consistency, reduce tank time, and increase overall efficiency, saving your brewery time and money. Get started for 30 days risk-free. Visit precisionfermentation.com/brewing. So Jan, let's talk about some of the weirder beers first. I always try to pace it so we can talk about hoppy beers at the end.
Sure.
Just to keep people with us. It's just, it's that typical, entertainment strategy where if we deliver the things that everyone wants to hear first, then, we at least want to make them fast forward through this to get to the hoppy stuff at the end. But let's talk about smoked beers. Your Gelber Rauch, smoked blonde ale. Yep. Again, like I said, is one of my favorites. You mentioned, before we started talking, that you've got a smoked Helles that you've now added
we've
to
got
the
a
mix.
smoked Helles, and then we brew a beer every holiday called Stjørdalsøl, which is a Norwegian dark smoked beer as well. Stjørdalsøl, yeah. In 2017,
you have multiple smoked beers on the tap list.
We have two right now.
Okay.
Yeah, not just one. But in 2017, Josh Cody of Colorado Farm Brewing and Colorado Malting Company took a trip to Norway to learn how to make this beer, which was really incredible beer. It's the smokiest beer you'll ever try if you get to go to Norway and try one at one of the Farmhouse co-ops that they're made at. But what makes that beer truly unique is that the
smokiest beer that I've ever had. That sounds like a challenge.
I would almost guarantee it. It's pretty incredible. We were at the Farmhouse where they smoke and kiln the malt at the same time using alderwood. And I smelled like it for probably 3 days, even after shower. It's impressive. It sticks everywhere.
Pervasive.
Yeah. But just really interesting style that you don't see too often out of Northern Norway. Yeah. And that was a really great experience just to kind of go through the whole process of starting with the basic malt. This beer is a single malt beer. It gives all of its character and flavor is just from one malt. And so the malt comes out of the kiln, pretty rustic looking and stuff, and it's all different colors. But it's dark black beer.
And it starts as a simple churro barley.
Yep.
And then you go through an alderwood smoking process.
Smoking and kilning at the same time.
Talk to me about that smoking and kilning process.
Yeah. So they have these.
Since you've been there and seen it happen.
They have these.
When I talked to Lars Marius Garshall, we didn't get into that specific beer. So I feel like, we can, add some perspective on this.
Yeah. They have what's called a Farmhouse, and generally these Farmhouses are shared by brewing co-ops or just people in the area or generational,
right.
kind of homebrewing co-op people that make these styles that are truly unique to that. They're not really commercially available because they're so strong. Stjørdalsøl is around 10% generally and used to have a good time on Christmas Eve. They'll usually drink it all. But yeah, so the Farmhouse has what's basically is a firebox built into it, and it's pretty long, probably about 15 feet by 10 feet. And then they're constantly feeding it alderwood, dry alderwood and wet alderwood to control the smoke variation. And then that heat is coming up through the floor of a wooden floor with like holes in it. And then the smoke and the heat is kilning and smoking at the same time, where normally maybe some malts are, kilned first and then smoked after.
Sure.
Yeah. And so it gives it just a way more intense characteristic than traditional smoked malt. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Josh Cody replicates that process in Alamosa. Yeah. And so we brew it every year as a collaboration with them.
And he does it the same kind of way where he's killing and smoking at the same time.
Yes, correct. Yeah. With alderwood that he's kind of getting somehow from Norway. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We won't ask.
Yeah.
Is there a black market for alderwood?
There might be. I don't know how that all works with, different types of woods coming across borders and stuff.
We'll just assume that he goes through the proper channels
I would assume so.
Import things legally. Yeah.
Totally legal. Yeah.
So did he have to, if that's not a typical production process for him, they have to set up, some special equipment.
Totally. Yeah. They kind of build their own, kind of mini farmhouse, because basically I think they're only making it for us and them every year.
Yeah.
And so theirs is kind of outside. Similar method though, firebox underneath with perforations above with the malt spread out on top. Yeah.
And I imagine that becomes a very manual process where you're having to manually then flip and turn and make sure that, the heat is being evenly distributed, that, that the smoke can pass through it and is actually rising up through rather than,
Yeah. And these sunhouses like to burn down too in Norway. It's pretty dangerous too, because you're dealing with open fire that's coming straight up through basically a cinder block, but then wooden top with perforations,
and then a very flammable product on top of it.
Yeah. So they can burn down too, which is kind of dangerous. Yeah.
So why not replicate that process in America?
To make it's a style that everybody loves.
To make this one beer that no one's ever heard of that you only make once a year.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It is super delicious though. It has notes from like Coca-Cola to tobacco and leather and barbecue. It's just this really unctuous, really enjoyable beer. Yeah, which is truly unique because the alderwood just gives it this totally different smoke characteristic than you're used to.
Yeah. And so you're using 100% of this alderwood smoked malt, which has some of the most insane smoke character that you've ever experienced. And and so you've got all of this natural limitation around there, but now you've also been kilning it in a maybe less scientific way.
Yes, completely. Definitely.
And you're also smoking it, so you're impacting even the performance of the malt.
Yes,
as you go. Talk to me from a brewing perspective, then. And of course, year to year, batches. There can be batch variation.
Yeah,
definitely
some of the malt
can definitely perform in different ways in the brew house. So you take this product that Josh has made.
Yep.
And then you try to brew with it. That has to become a challenge. Talk to me about how you all manage through that.
Yeah, so there's definitely...
This is one where you just hand it off to a assistant brewer and say, "Hey, here's the recipe. Just go make this."
Yeah. It's there is variation year to year because you're going to have different variations in the alderwood from year to year and smoking and just temperatures and everything like that. It's interesting. So every year it's going to come out slightly different. We kind of treat it like a traditional single infusion mash though, actually, and that's what they were doing from the people that I learned it from. And it's just key.
Which makes sense because most of the farmhouse brewers in Norway, they were not brewing, there's
simple setups that they had made themselves for the most part.
For sure.
Yeah. So we're just doing kind of single infusion. It actually isn't too complex of a method, but you just want to make sure that that you're milling it correctly, and that you're not sticking the mash. It has the tendency to stick the mash quite easily. Yeah. Since it's so kilned out and dried and stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What you just making sure that you're keeping it moving and
we're just it's kind of a normal brew day.
Yeah.
We don't incorporate too much hops. They would use whatever kind of, hops were around, anything they got. And then, fermenting with just Chico, and they'll use whatever yeast they have. They don't have particular affinity. Bread yeast, Chico yeast, whatever brewer's yeast whatever they have is what they're going to ferment it with.
It's less about the yeast and it's more about the malt.
The malt. It's 100% malt driven.
Yeah. Well, how does that impact efficiency again, brewing 100% with that kind of malt?
Yeah, we're definitely overbuilding this recipe to about 70% efficiency. Yeah. So it's definitely having a lower efficiency. So
for a commercial,
for commercial, example.
Your normal expectation, I'm sure, is somewhere in the mid to high 80s or
mid to high 80s for sure. Yeah. And I think we used almost 1,100 pounds for about 9 barrels, so that was quite a bit.
How does and then in terms of gravity, where does it start at and where does it tend to finish?
So let's see here. So it's came out at around 10% ABV. So I think we nailed about 21.5, and then it finishes, what would that be at? Probably around like, oh shoot, I would have to look. Sorry, I'm blanking on that math off the top of my head right now.
It's morning. It's math.
Yeah. It's not super sweet. If I had to guess, I think it'd be around 6 Plato it finishes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I don't know if that math adds up. So sorry if I'm not doing that math right.
It's not super sweet, but enough residual
sweetness
to kind of help balance out some of that kind of smoky or more bitter kind of element.
And they brew it for strength for sure. That's a big portion of it. They like to have a good time on Christmas Eve, and so they're totally fine with a more attenuated beer.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the fruity flavor component to this, but then that if the yeast isn't impacting that, normally that's a major source of those kinds of flavors.
Totally.
And you're saying that this is now then coming just from the malt itself.
Just from the malt itself. Yeah, it's pretty incredible the depth of flavor that you can get just from smoking malt with a different type of wood. It's fascinating.
Wow. Yeah. And so when you taste it, then how do you describe the flavor?
Yeah, so it's super rich, pretty unctuous. It's almost got some umami characteristics. It's got big notes of tobacco, leather, barbecue, just general barbecue. And then it's just kind of, very, almost woodsy as well. Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of being in a moist, Norwegian woods. It's kind of like that.
Like a moist Norwegian woods.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
How do other folks around here, consumers and, other brewers, respond to it? I mean, at 10%, kind of sweet, super insanely smoky beer. It can't be lighting up the charts for you.
Yeah, brewers tend to love it for sure. We have a few brewers that are coming around.
I did get a press release from you about it, so you're pushing it out there.
We are pushing it. We think we might be the first to have canned it ever as a commercial variety, but we don't know for sure. But I think it's a fun, it takes a lot of education on our front of house staff. But once people kind of, are curious about such an extreme kind of beer, they kind of like have a bond with it. They're like, oh shoot, I've tried this crazy Norwegian smoked beer, and they kind of like, have some pride behind it and kind of start enjoying it even more. Yeah. They're like, this is kind of my thing. The people that it resonates with. Yeah.
Sure.
It's definitely not going to, connect with everybody out there, but if they're brave enough to try it and are open, to smoked beer flavors, usually it connects. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the other smoked beers that you make. Sure. I'm curious about that. Now, that's certainly the big and dark side of things, but your light and pale smoked beers are also, kind of core, year-round beers for you.
Yeah. So we make a beer called Gelberrausch that we usually make from spring to fall, and that's, pretty straightforward smoked blonde that we use. We use mostly Colorado Malting Company malt for that.
Okay.
And we've been using some oak smoked wheat to incorporate that. They'll make that for us. And they'll make also a little bit of birchwood smoked barley for that as well. And then that's just really crushable, 4% beer that you can really almost forget about the smoked beer character after you've had a few. One of the beautiful things of those lighter smoked beers is that they're just kind of fade in the background and just kind of make the beer even more drinkable, to me at least. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. I mean, you mentioned oak smoked wheat, and so naturally I think of Grodziska. That kind of ingredient base. What is it about oak smoking, versus some of the other smoked malts that are available out there?
Yeah, we really do like oak smoked wheats. In that it incorporates maybe just a bit of a softer, rounder smoke characteristic that is a little more approachable and a little more sessionable, rather than, hitting over the head with just beechwood, which can be pretty intense. We do like to blend different types of smoked malts together Yeah, so
Really?
we'll do beechwood and oak and cherry and stuff like that. And then I think the most current other light beer we have on tap is called Clemens Smoke Lager, which is a Hellas smoked lager, and that incorporates some smoked malt from Colorado Malting Company that used Law's whiskey staves to smoke the malt with.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So what kind of percentage, in a pale smoked, beer does the smoked malt typically make up?
Sometimes up to 50%, but sometimes quite a bit less too. Yeah, we can go down to about 10-15%. Yeah, and still get quite a bit of smoke character.
Yeah, as everyone I've talked to says, it tends to not be a linear thing.
No,
it's
not at all.
If you
Yeah.
add more smoked malt, it doesn't necessarily get smokier, especially when you're talking about a 4% beer where there's not a whole lot of malt in general.
Yeah, that's
in
about
beer.
50%. That beer would be, about 50% smoked malt.
Yeah.
For that one. Yeah.
And then when you blend some of these smoked malts, what do those blends tend to look like? In terms of how you distribute those? Are you using more of some and less of others?
We'll use more of some softer ones like the oak smoked wheat, and then incorporate maybe a little bit of cherry or a little bit of the, Law's whiskey stave. Yeah, oak. That's oak as well, but it's just got a more intense flavor since it's been charred once already and then had whiskey in it and stuff. So, yeah. So we'll generally, do like 75-25%.
Yeah.
Or maybe 50-50 too. Yeah.
So you're using some of these other stronger smoked malts as more of like a flavor accent, a little spicing there rather than doing the main lift.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I have my own personal preferences too. I kind of lean towards the softer sides of them, except for Chodkowski is 100% smoked malt and intense. But when we're going for the lighter stuff, we're just kind of trying to be delicate with it, make sure that smoke character is there, but really just providing drinkability. I find that having a light smoked beer just makes you reach back for it more and more. It makes it more drinkable to me, at least.
Yeah. And then you're using just regular 2-row in addition to that.
Yeah. Usually pills, just regular 2-row pills from Colorado Malting Company or another craft maltsters such as Troubadour.
I'm noticing a local Colorado craft malt theme on this.
Yeah. We during the pandemic we've almost completely stopped using. We've stopped using other malts not produced outside of Colorado for base malt. So we use 100% Colorado base malt now. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, and we'll try to use as much specialty malt by these craft maltsters as well, but then we'll sprinkle in a little bit of other specialty malt from other maltsters.
Just because it's not as available, or you don't want to.
Yeah, and it's a characteristic that somebody's not making yet, and we're like, okay, we'd like to incorporate that. It's just something that's been proven and we're comfortable with, using. But we thought that was really important during the pandemic to just try to kind of keep things even more local as possible. Yeah.
It seems, and that's an interesting one from a principle standpoint, because it makes sense to work locally. This year, especially with the supply chain, or last year with the supply chain interruptions, with major issues happening with imports and the whole world going crazy around this thing, it actually seems like an interesting strategic move now to guarantee a consistent supply chain by working locally around that.
Yeah, totally. It was just a added benefit for us actually after that decision. It wasn't based in that at all, but it makes sense. Yeah, that it did. Weren't waiting around for malt to come over from Europe at all. We were all set. We had all the malt we needed. Yeah.
It's interesting that you can also do this, because while you all do package and do get, canned beer and bottled beer out there into the market, it tends to be a more premium product when you do package it. You do sell a lot of it right here out of the tap room.
Yep.
And you sell a lot of beer over the bar.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Here at the brewery.
Yeah.
What's that percentage breakdown to?
So packaging in cans is new to us. Before we were just kind of sticking to, mostly kind of special barrel aged projects or mixed culture and saison, putting that into bottles. And then when the pandemic hit, much like many other breweries, we were like, okay, now's the time. We're going to start canning beer if we want to stay afloat and keep everybody on and keep brewing. So I would say probably right about now we're about 80-20 over the bar.
Yeah.
And then, but maybe it might be a little bit creeping more like 25%. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, as a result of that, because margins are so much better for you as a brewery for beer that you serve over the bar, you can support something like, spending 4 times as much on local
completely. Yeah.
Colorado-based
absolutely.
malt.
Yeah. It does help us a lot. Our margins are so good in the tap room that we are able to commit to, using expensive ingredients, which we find, make our beers really unique and flavorful in their own ways. But it's just, it does help to have all those sails over the bar. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned this Helles also, smoked Helles that you've been rolling out. How does that differ then from the blonde smoked blonde ale?
Yeah, so it's definitely gets our full kind of like lager treatment where, we have a, pretty traditional craft brew house direct fire, but we're kind of doing some modified kind of decoction where we're just pulling over some turbid wort and boiling that for about 15 minutes and then using that wort to bring it up to, sack rest. So we'll do a protein rest and then we'll add some more liquor to that, bring it up again, and then lauter over about 5 barrels, boil that for about 15 minutes, and then bring that back over, and then bring that up to sack rest, and then we'll also do mash out as well. Yeah, so we're trying to add some complexity into the lager beers that we make through these different mash processes, and we think it does provide some bigger depth and stuff. Our attenuation maybe won't go. It'll stay around, like, instead of like if we weren't doing this process, we'd ferment out our killer pills to 1.9 or something. But since we enacted this, it's, a little sweeter, not by much, but maybe 2.2, 2.3.
Yeah.
And that really just gives the beer a lot more body and, interesting malt character, and makes it more enjoyable to us. Yeah.
Sure. I hadn't thought about it, but how does decocting a mash that uses smoked malt differ from decocting a regular mash?
Yeah, so we're not doing traditional decoction, so we're not able to move grist over to it. So we're moving some turbid wort. We're just taking a really quick turbid wort run over to the kettle and boiling that.
Okay.
In hopes that we're getting some kind of characteristic and long sugar Maillard reaction, and then moving that back to the mash and continuing on our mash protocol. Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
Process.
Yeah. Does it tend to concentrate anything of the smoke flavors or impact that in any way?
On the smoke beers, I definitely would say so. Yeah, it's definitely something to account for where we're just using maybe a little bit less. On the smoked Hellas, we probably used around 20% of the smoked malt, not quite as much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, what's the rest of lager fermentation look like for you?
Lager fermentation is, we're just using 3470 and then we're knocking out ice cold, as cold as we can get.
Right.
We have on the new brew house, we have 2 stage, so we have glycol hookup. We're able to knock out 50 degrees year round. So we're knocking out 50 degrees and then pulling a little bit of whatever break we can off the bottom before we pitch.
Yeah.
And then kind of traditional lager fermentation, couple weeks, and then slow crash. We'll cap the tank, around 6 Plato or something like that. Yeah. And then slow crash down, degree or 2 a day, and then lager for anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah. And we do find that we do need those the beers are just better that way. Yeah.
Sure. Well, like I said, as we were talking, you're in a neighborhood with some pretty good lager brewer.
Yeah, there's a good lager brewer around
not
the
very
corner.
far away.
Yeah,
so,
great beers. Yeah, and we thought we would make our beers different as our lager beers are always 100% Colorado. So we're able to source not quite noble hops, but as close as I can get is Tettnanger. Yeah, which isn't a noble hop at all, but it's about as low as alpha acid as we can get and grown in Colorado. So we use that. And
so you're using Colorado grown Tettnanger.
Yeah, and crystal hops. Yeah, yeah. And those are our lower alpha acid hops that go pair well with the lagers. Yeah.
Fun. Well, let's pivot and talk about some other beers. Before we do that, from the rotatable pickup tube on Rogue Brewing's pilot brew house to the integrated hopbacks on Sierra Nevada's twin prototyping brew houses, SS Brewtech has taken technology they invented, working with world-renowned industry veterans, and made them available to every craft brewer. To learn more about SS Brewtech's innovation list, head over to ssbrewtech.com. Also, are you involved in your local homebrew club? Want to receive even more benefits? Then you should sign up for 5 Star Chemicals Homebrew Club program. It's free, and you could have the chance to test out new products before they hit the market, receive exclusive swag, and discounts on brewing, cleaners, and sanitizers. Head on over to their website to sign up. You won't want to miss it. Jan, let's talk about hoppy beers.
Yeah, great.
We'll throw that in the middle here just to really confuse people.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's a good way to go because I say I'm a Saison person, but really I'm crushing IPA more than anything.
We'll get to Saison and mixed fermentation beers too, for sure. But this category, obviously, it was, a favorite for our craft beer and brewing judges last year with Time Zero, Inner Light, the international pale ale that you make has garnered a whole bunch of medals for you and a whole lot of respect. Making hoppy beers in this kind of way in a pretty competitive market, you also have kind of stuck to doing it in a clearer traditional, more, I shouldn't even call it traditional because none of this is more than 30 years old at this point. And yours are very pale, maybe not as caramely or crystally as what one might call a traditional. They've definitely paid attention to some of these trends in that clearer side of hoppy beers. Let's talk to me a little bit about formulating the ideas, for something like Inner Light, and what your creative process looks like for that.
Yeah. So for Inner Light, Inner Light and Times Arrow, we've been making for quite a long time now.
Yeah.
I guess 6-7 years, maybe. Yeah, about that long. We could start with Inner Light. That's, kind of started out as what we thought was going to be a hoppy pale wheat.
Yeah.
Now we just kind of call it pale.
Sure.
But it's about 50% wheat, 50% pills. And it's a pretty straightforward recipe. Very simple recipe with that. And then might have a little bit of flaked wheat as well.
You were putting the wheat in there long before that became popular.
Yeah.
And look, you still got it to come clear too.
Yeah. It has a little bit of haze. It's not clear.
Sure.
And then it gets a Whirlpool edition of Amarillo, which we used to use some extract for that. And then we found that pellets, just provided a much better flavor. We definitely do some lower temperature whirlpooling, nothing too extreme. We're generally coming down below 190, but mostly around 180.
Yeah.
And we have our kettle hooked up to a crazy kitchen fan that's super strong. So we're just cooling the wort from our exhaust fan on our kettle, whirlpooling. Takes about 20-30 minutes to get down, but we're not running our wort through our heat exchanger.
You're just blowing air across the top.
It's coming across, and the fan is so strong that we actually pick up a little bit of gravity too, because it's evaporating so fast. Yeah. So we do account for that as well. So that's how we're doing. It
helps that you're brewing out here in Colorado where it's 5,000. You're a mile high,
it's dry.
and it's very and cold for a good portion of the year too.
Yeah. So that process happens a lot faster in the winter, obviously, but it doesn't take too long for us to get that going. We're just trying to keep out, whatever we can out of our heat exchanger, so I don't have to rip it apart sooner than later.
Sure.
If we
and all these brewers at the southern part of the country where their groundwater is warm and they, have all these other issues, air temperatures, or very few people could actually get away with doing it the way that you do it. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's happenstance that the fan from our old system, which was a kitchen hood, that was what was over our old kettle. We just kind of hooked that up with that, and it runs so fast that it cools the wort so fast while whirlpooling that we're able to do this. So,
and you're not worried about bringing out any kind of foreign stuff into this nice sweet fermentable liquid.
We don't generally go below 180, so we're not too concerned. Yeah, if you go below that, you would want to kind of try to keep your system closed up. Yeah. And I think that's how a lot of the other guys are doing it. They are cooling it. Yeah. We find it to still be hot enough. Yeah. And then, so it gets just that's basically the only hop charge it gets is a Whirlpool charge. I think it gets about 11 pounds, just an 11-pound bag for a 10-barrel batch. And then knockout, ferment with Chico, and then dry hopped with solely Mosaic. The water treatments are pretty straightforward. It doesn't lean one way or another. Get some calcium chloride and gypsum. I forget what parts per million we're landing on with everything, but kind of middle of the road that way. And then it gets a dry hop around 6 Plato. Almost everything we do gets a dry hop around 6 Plato. Yeah.
So close to the end, but not quite the end.
Yeah. And it finishes.
You're not fully biotransforming.
No, not fully, not completely. Some hazy beers we do definitely go for that. Yeah. But on beers like Times Arrow and Inner Light, we're kind of on the back end of that.
What's the benefit of doing it right then? And because I could see the benefit of waiting till it's done and you're completely off yeast, because then you can repitch and go through that from a production standpoint. And I can see the benefit of going for biotransformation, where if you're just going to go all in, just go all in.
Yeah.
But it seems like
I think we get
you're messing up your ability to repitch.
That's totally true. Yeah. But I think we get a little bit of best of both worlds. We're definitely creating a small amount of biotransformation, but we're also, just kind of locking in that more fresh hop characteristic towards the end as well, since we're capping the tanks then as well after we're dry hopping. Yeah. So that's just kind of the method we landed on after 6 years. We're like, we've tried a bunch of different things, over the years, and we're like, okay, this is kind of what's producing what we like. And yeah.
Sure. I mean, I can't tell you you're wrong. You've got plenty of metals that prove otherwise.
Yeah.
So no. But it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. We're big proponents of just doing what's working for us in our brew house. We will try anything, we love trying, science-based, techniques for sure all the time as much as we can. But if something doesn't land and it isn't working for you, why continue to do that? You got to do what works for you and your brew house.
You're small enough to keep trying new things, keep experimenting with new ways of changing things up. From a process standpoint, now you have other folks working with you in the brew house. How do you convey these kinds of things? Like, what's the learning process look like?
It's a collaborative effort between Jacob, our lead brewer, and Kaylee, now our assistant brewer, who we brought on last year. And I'll come with an idea, or Jacob come with an idea, and we'll just kind of be like, okay, so this sounds like a really interesting technique. Can we incorporate this into a beer? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. We just have conversations about this. We're like, will this technique lead to a better beer or not? And then we go from there. Yeah, that's kind of just the starting point for all.
So you guys meet on a weekly basis, or
in the brew house every day, all day.
It's more informal, kind of talking about things.
Yep, but always constantly talking about it. Yeah.
When it comes time to brew something, brew a beer that you had brewed before, you just before you start brewing, you chat about that and kind of make some creative decisions.
If there's something, like we're like, okay, this would be the batch that we'd want to try to execute a new technique on, or something like that.
Yeah.
More often than not, for beers like Times Arrow and Inner Light, that these are extremely small changes over many, many, many years. And so at this point, those recipes are not locked. Nothing's ever locked. You can always make a beer better, but our standard techniques and how we make those beers are, pretty well set. Yeah.
How do you, how do you taste these things? It's an interesting one, but for a small brewery that's very taproom focused, that's making things like, it's not like you have a tasting panel that
we have a sensory panel.
You do?
Yeah, we do. We use Draft Lab, and almost every week. We try to do it every week, but not quite. It's been hard with the pandemic and getting people from outside the brewery and stuff. Pre-pandemic, we had a pretty robust sensory panel going.
Really?
And now we're just starting to get back to it again after just scrambling and making everything happen.
Sure.
And then having people come and go, and just a lot of different stuff. So we're just starting to get that back together. But so we do have a little bit of data from the past, and, just seeing if these beers are true to style, true to the beer, every batch to batch is important to us. So we'll taste everything and then use Draft Lab to log it all. Yeah.
When you are at full speed, what does that look like? Is that a weekly process?
That's a weekly process with about 5 or 6 people coming in to taste, every beer that's, going to be packaged, or it has been packaged. Within the last week. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And that was a big thing that we enacted before. And I feel like it really was a thing that kind of helped us to be a better brewery. For sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Just doing that every week, just trying to wrap your head around every beer. You can be wrong about lots of things in sensory, but just the act of doing it repetitively really just does help. Yeah.
Reviewing that data, how were you able to identify some things that you might want to adjust and be able to feed that information back into the brewing process?
Yeah. So, we'll definitely experiment with different, rates of, salts and stuff. And then we're like, okay, we went too far with that. Multiple people noticed that, or that the beers were for some reason bitter. Okay. We go look back at the lot, and like, oh shoot, maybe these alpha acids were high on the bag that we had, or something like that. Okay. Or, something else happened. But it can be beneficial just kind of going back and dialing stuff in, making things more consistent.
Sure. And it can still be a sellable beer, still within a spec that you might have for it, but just, you guys
spot on.
Have the fine point on that. You're going to make those adjustments for. No, I always find that interesting, because as important as data is, if you don't have a mechanism for acting on that data or pulling that feedback back into a process, then sometimes those things get lost and those changes don't get made. I'm curious about that, but it is interesting to have a kind of disciplined weekly, approach to this, and then have all of that data that then you can go back and refer to and see how things, and also see how people change over time.
Completely.
And people's palates.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We have to we definitely try to incorporate other people outside of our business into our tasting panel. So people could be really harsh or really homerish, on our beer. There's rarely a middle ground for somebody who works here.
Sure.
Yeah. And so it's been difficult trying to get some people that know us, but are going to be critical of our beer back onto the panel after the pandemic. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're working towards that and getting the panel more robust and just helping out. But yeah, once it's, going, it's really, really beneficial.
Yeah. No, and for a brewery this size, not a very big brewery, like having that kind of discipline can be often harder to find, but obviously, clearly it's had a positive effect for you all.
Yeah, definitely has.
As I'm thinking about your hoppy beers, I just have this one question.
Yeah.
And that's, what takes them from good to great? Because there's this gap between, and it's not as hard these days with the amount of information and knowledge that's out there about how to brew these beers. It's not that hard to brew a good one. But getting from good to great, becomes this harder to identify, harder to articulate piece.
Yeah.
If you were thinking about it, what do you think has made some of the biggest, I shouldn't say biggest, there's some of these are the smallest differences that help push from that good to the great level?
It's really is just the little details. You talk to, lager breweries and they're just like, it's a million little things. And it's this, you can apply that same, train of thought to hoppy beer as well. It's a million little things. And over the years, I'm kind of a slow learner. It's taken me a long time to, get these beers this dialed. Some people might be able to excel at it a little bit quicker than me, but it really is just, improving, having a sensory panel, just taking way better brewery log notes, logging everything that you're doing as much as you can, write down, and then going back and looking at that and seeing what you can improve. So these things take time, these little improvements every at it. It takes a long time. We might only brew time zero, 10, 12 times a year. So we only get 10 or 12 times to, nail it or make it better.
10 or 12 times. That's plenty. That's plenty. Yeah. How over the years that you've been brewing something like Time Zero, how have the ingredients changed? Your recipe may not have changed that much. Clearly the technique has shifted in small ways, but as we know, between hops, malt, etc., these are agricultural products. And those things definitely changed. Hops have definitely been, changed over the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. We're a little stubborn in some aspects and have gotten lucky, say with certain hops like Idaho 7, to me has become just an incredible hop over the years. Maybe at the beginning of it, like people weren't that into it, a little more dank, could have, kicked off some onion or garlic even. At this point, it's just really awesome, complementary hop that's dank, citrusy, and piney all at the same time. It's kind of hitting all those notes that we want in a traditional West Coast IPA. As far as like malt goes, we were brewing it with maybe some Environment malt, but then we have been brewing it with craft malt for at least 2-3 years now. Yeah. And that's just been, craft malt has just, gotten to this level where it's just, as good, if not better, for what you want as, mass produced malt. So we just find that incorporates just, richness and body and flavor that West Coast, definitely needs,
Right.
It definitely doesn't have any crystal malt in it or anything.
Sure.
But it's just, gives you that malt backbone that a West Coast still needs to have.
Sure.
For sure. Yeah.
And that's a Chico, fermentation.
Chico fermentation, very clean. Generally probably a little colder. I think we ferment at 64.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why? Does that give you?
Just to kind of give it a little more clean flavor. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing too warm. We're fine with taking longer fermentations. We do a lot of Chico fermentation kind of colder as well. Yeah. Throughout. Yeah. We don't ferment anything too warm.
I mean, it's not like Chico produces a lot of esters in the first place.
No, that's true. Yeah. We just don't find an issue with it taking too long or, like passing diacetyl or anything like that.
Yeah. How much longer would it typically take, cold, or I shouldn't say cold, 64 versus, your typical 68 or
something, maybe just a day or two longer. That's fine by us. Yeah, we're a small brewery, so it's okay. We're not in a rush to put anything out. Yeah.
And there really is a sensory impact, you think, between
you know what, I to be honest, I probably couldn't say this is just intuition, from brewing. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So
it's just the way you do it.
Yeah.
As you shifted from, into craft malt 3 years ago or so, how long, what was that dialing in process, for your hoppy beers? I mean, I imagine there's some batches there where you were learning on the job.
Yeah. So, we found that, we were not using as much pale malt over the time. So most of our beers are just based in Pilsner malt, and that gives it just a little bit of a lighter body and character and stuff. And then if we need to punch it up, we can punch it up with some wheat or some flake material or oats or something like that.
Yeah.
But we like to start with the pills for mostly. Some beers, we'll do half pills, half pale. But to me, craft malt, the pale malt can be quite overpowering. It's more, it's more like a Maris Otter or something for the most part. Pretty strong character, pretty strong tasting malt character. Yeah.
And so, but the Pils malt from the craft maltsters is definitely hits that.
Yeah, hits that nice spot. Yeah, where we're able to work with it and provide a real nice foundation for these hoppy beers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that definitely did take a little bit of time. We had been brewing with, about half craft malt for the whole time the brewery's been open,
Sure.
but just to dial, the hoppy beers in specifically. Yeah. We're like, okay, maybe about 3-4 years ago, we're like, we're going to switch all these over to Pils malt. And it really did help quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. No, makes sense.
Yeah.
In terms of the beers you brew, what percentage or so would be hop forward beers?
Oh, probably about half. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
We make a lot of hoppy beer. Yeah. Yeah.
For all the Chodkowskis out there.
Yeah, no, it's at least half. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that gives you you have those beers that you sell and make a lot of that give you some room to experiment on some of those other things. Let's talk a little, speaking of things that you love that may, be more labors of love. Let's talk about mixed fermentation beers.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got a few fooders back there and, that's been a big part of what you've done from the start, Tristero, Bière Oval. These are all beers that you've won medals for. Talk to me about your approach to mixed fermentation brewing.
Yeah, I just always have fallen in love with Belgian beers and sour beers. And then, inspired by the American craft brewers who started, your Firestone Walkers, your New Belgium, stuff like that. Just have had sour programs going for a long time.
Yeah.
And be inspired by them, mostly the American ones, by their mixed culture techniques. That's what we've adopted. We definitely try to give a go for some spontaneous beer, but we just didn't have enough room in stock.
Yeah.
We had incorporated some of that beer into other beers at points, but it was just something we couldn't continue to do in our space. We just don't have enough room to do it. But as far as mixed culture goes, really I'm just kind of driving Brett forward first and then acid second, almost always. Yeah. And just, using different types of Brett combinations and just giving the beer its time. That's the main thing. Yeah.
Using different Brett combinations. So, a common approach to mixed culture beer is to develop your culture and make everything with that.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like that's
your
approach.
Have almost every vessel has its own unique thing going on in it. Yeah. Whether that be, something that's a little bit higher acid or something that's entirely just Brett only. Yeah. And we have maybe one or two single isolate Brett, Saison, tanks going, but everything else that's in the fooders would be mixed culture or many different Bretts. Yeah. And we use those beers. Sometimes we release them straight up as a single beer, or we'll use these to blend and make different beers off
blending between your different mixed culture beers.
Yeah. So it's just all on what we want. We're like, okay, cool. So this fooder is producing this awesome, Brett beer. We're going to let that shine on its own. Example of that would be Weirding Way. And Zappa Weirding Way just got a good food awards over the weekend, which was awesome. Yeah, thanks. And so we just like to let that fooder kind of speak on its own. We will use it every once in a while to blend into other things, but for the most part, that one stands out on its own.
Yeah.
And we have a couple other that are kind of, a little more funky and more sour, a little on the weirder ends, and then we'll use those as blenders, to incorporate into more, straightforward Brett beers, if you can say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the origin of the cultures. I mean, are these commercial pitches, or these?
They're commercial pitches for the most part, where we've selected.
You don't have a romantic story about capturing, the yeast off of a plant in a backyard.
I've done it off of my pear tree, but it just didn't produce something that I was into.
You were on a vision quest.
Yeah.
An old man gave you these mushrooms, and it led you to this culture that has defined the beer.
Fun. That sounds fun. But no, they're all commercial varieties, and we're just always kind of doing trial batches, kind of home trial batches and carboys. Just be like, okay, is this something we're into? Okay, yes, let's put it into something bigger.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes we don't generally add after we've decided what we want these vessels to be. We'll kind of let them stand on their own and do their own thing. We try to get there before the fooder, not try to adjust the fooder after the fact.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. You do carboy fermentation.
Yeah,
with some
we
of these
will do
cultures
that.
Just to kind of almost bench test everything and see what you like before you commit to an entire fooder of it.
Yeah. And then another odd thing that we do, we do some primary fermentation in stainless, but we also do some primary fermentation in the fooders themselves as well. So we do a combination of that. Just like to use every tool possible. We do a lot of aged hop stuff that goes into the fooders as well. Gives that, funk and aged hop character you can't get anywhere else. Beer Valley is an example of that beer where that had, is the hops in that are aged hops.
Yeah.
That we age ourselves that we bought way too much of about 5 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, but we just like to use every tool in the toolbox for mixed ferm beers. Yeah, except for spontaneous, which we wish we could, but we just don't have the space.
So it sounds to me then like you have multiple methods here too, where some are approached in that kind of, say, New Belgian-ish, sour method, or which I guess really goes back to Rodenbach, of taking fully fermented beer and then laying it on a mixed culture, in order for that to develop, versus some, where, fermenting wort from the outset with that, mix of culture. And you do both of those things.
We do. Yeah. And we try to, just for our small amount of fooders, so I don't have a ton of, research and data on this, but we do find that, certain mixed cultures work better with different, methods.
Huh.
Yeah. So
how, and what, is there some kind of, are there certain Brett types that work in different means there, or?
Yeah, there would
or
be.
Is it
there
like
would be
if it
some,
has lacto and PDO, then it's probably going to be better this way?
Yeah, I would say if we don't have a whole lot of PDO in our brewery, but there is one, and that one we would ferment out first and then put it towards the PDO, to slow that down and just try to keep that at best bay as possible.
Right.
Yeah. And the other ones mostly are probably just lacto and Brett and maybe some other wild yeast as well.
Yeah. In terms of Bretts, what do you, how do you think about those things? And you mentioned that you're like adding some extra stuff to, to move things in different directions. As you think about that kind of library of flavor and what some of these, Brett strains might, contribute to beer, are there any ones that, have particular characteristics that you identify? Yeah,
definitely Dre is like probably number one for sure.
Yeah.
But on its own, it can be just kind of, singular and stuff. But we do definitely try to push for those, when we're having.
And what does the Dre give you?
Those smarty, sweet tarts characteristics, not quite as barnyardy, not as horse blankety. That'll lean it to that direction. When we do blend them, we do like to make sure that everything is balanced though. So like if we're having a Brux, a Dre, and then another one, we just want them to be in harmony with each other and not have one just pop out and just kill the rest of them off. Yeah. Flavor wise. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how does Brux taste to you in your mind? What do you associate it with?
Yeah. Right now, just what is it? Boulevard, their Brett beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is Brux all the way to me.
Right.
Yeah. Which we've been
Saison
able to do.
Brett,
Saison Brett. Yeah. Which we've done some collabs with them, and that's what it came out to be tasting like, like it's like, okay, that's very strong. And I'm just assuming that's Brux, but that to me is Brux in my head. Yeah.
As you're going through this.
Yeah, dry, ripping, strong, powerful Brett. Yeah, which is enjoyable for sure. But we like to, incorporate everything that we can. Yeah.
What does the process look like, for you? If you are, you've got a mixed fermentation beer rolling in one of the fooders, how often are you tasting it? And at what point do you say, hey, maybe this needs something else?
Yeah, totally. We're tasting them, at least twice a month.
Oh, really? That often?
Yeah. Wow. I'm getting into them every other Tuesday, basically, and checking in on them. If you don't do that, they can go.
Right.
You want to get to it
these
before.
Aren't 2-year sour beers. If these are, 4 to 6 month mixed fermentation beers, then that makes more sense.
We have some year-long projects that are going for sure, but still like to get into them and taste them. We have, sample valves on all our fooders, so it's much easier to do that. And so I want to be pulling nails off of everything too.
Right.
Yeah. And these are larger vessels, less oxygen incorporation and stuff like that. No, I'm sorry. I got sidetracked.
So every 2 weeks you're tasting?
About every 2 weeks. Yeah. And we're just making sure they're on track and fermenting out correctly and, passing, THP, making sure there's none of that there before we move stuff on and decide what we want to do, if we're going to blend or release on their own. Yeah. Or fruit or, a lot of options, which is a lot of fun with mixed culture beer.
Right. Yeah. But I'm just picturing you like tasting this and thinking, this needs more Brett Dre.
Oh yeah. So we would probably end up if that was like, if it was missing a component that we would hopefully have some beer on hand that we could blend that in with. Yeah. And we're like, okay, that'll take care of that. We don't have to mess with this fooder.
So rather than just pitching something, you're thinking about how we blend out with something else that we have.
Definitely. Yeah. And then, as far as fooder health goes and stuff like that, we're generally, solariing for the most part, but we'll definitely reset the foeders with a rinse in citric acid and potassium bisulfate rinse and start with a new pitch. We'll either
each time,
not each time. No, we'll go. It depends on the beer for sure, but 2 to 3 times usually, which can be a couple years.
Yeah.
And then we'll either keep going. Okay, we're happy with this. We'll try that again. Might not even have the same outcome again because the foeder's changed and everything, and we've cleaned it and just things have changed. Or we'll just from our research try another combination of cultures and Brett. Yeah.
Well, that answers my question about the culture drifting over time.
Yeah, the culture will drift. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've lost some. We feel like we've got some back too, but it's some go, and you're just not able to keep them. If you don't have one single mixed culture going, it's hard to manage them all at the same time. Yeah, they can lose their way. Yeah.
It's such an interesting one. I remember talking to Lauren Limbach, of New Belgium about that, and like they were paranoid of cleaning those foeders. Mm-hmm. Because they've been going on and going on.
Yeah.
But when they got into it, and just took the sludge out of there, that it was actually pretty gross. And that as they got it started again, it was everything they liked and not the things that they didn't like.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. We've found that to be the case in
so you overcome the fear. And
yes,
then
totally.
Like, okay.
Yeah, it's something that's got to be done for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you talked about aged hops using that, and certainly I think most of us who are involved in this kind of and enjoy this kind of beer understand those kind of flavor contributions that a lot of that kind of funk element that we associate with Belgian beer seems to have a strong correlation to to aged hops in general, or at least into what Brett can do with the compounds that those aged hops produce. Talk to me a little bit about how you optimize for that.
Yeah, so we found like as a lot of other mixed culture breweries that the aged hop component is a huge component of this flavor that you enjoy, and so that's something we started using. We're buying whole bale hops from Colorado hop farms, just trying to get usually Willamette or Crystal. And then we're just generally doing, long boil, usually at least 60-90 minutes on those. We like that interaction with the Brett and the aged hops. It's just a characteristic you can't get any other way. If that's what you're going for, that's what you're going for. Yeah.
Right.
And and it's something that I find really delicious. So we do it in quite a bit of them. Yeah.
It seems like that funk component has been one of those elusive pieces for American sour beer brewers. Yeah. And as more have gone deeper into this and found out like we have seen the quality of American sour beer just, I wouldn't say improve, because it's not like one is good and one is bad. It just seems to track more closely with some of those inspirational beers from Belgian producers and be more closer to what folks were hoping to make in the first place, rather than just making highly acidic beers.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't want to say like faking the funk. It is, it's almost a method of faking the funk, because I do really think that mixed culture, American style mixed culture beer has a place in beer for sure.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be all spontaneous. It doesn't have to be all anything,
Sure.
And this is it's just one way using the aged hops to get closer to what we really enjoy drinking. Yeah. From European examples. Yeah.
There's no essential or singular method for making anything.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
There are methods that are, and again, I don't think you can say better, but there are methods that are more genuine in terms of being true to ingredients and being true to, to process, but being transparent about these things is the most important thing,
Yeah, totally.
As long as you are talking about what it is and not trying to pass something off as something that it isn't. Everything from kettle soured beers can be beautiful, fun beers that are really enjoyable for people to drink. They are different beers than, these aged, funky, beers that are taking after. And I think that was the problem early on, is people were like, well, that's just not, that's not like this thing. Well, it doesn't need to try to be that thing. It's its own thing.
It's its own thing. And I like that about American craft beer in general. It's just that we're able to kind of pull from whatever we want and just make our own things. It's a beautiful thing. We're not beholden to one tradition. Yeah.
Right. And it's funny and it's great because that's also been inspiring back out into this world of brewers.
Yeah.
And in fact, a large number of listeners to this very podcast are, scattered around the world. I hear from folks as far, from China, from Poland and, various parts of Europe, South America, etc., because they want to hear about how American brewers do what they do. Like, it is inspirational, and American, brewing, especially those early years of craft beer in the 70s, 80s, 90s, where I got into it in the 90s. Like, it was very much brewing beer inspired by other places.
Yeah.
And now that conversation is moving in so many different directions.
Yeah.
And I love it seeing now too, because you see the inspiration of, say, South American brewers using different kinds of ingredients, Amburana wood, etc.
Yeah.
That's impacting American brewers and picking this up. And so watching this dialogue happen around the world and through all of these places is it's just the coolest possible
it's awesome
thing.
Yeah.
Heard from a brewer in China who's making hazy IPA in Eastern China. I'm like,
awesome.
I mean, it's crazy. It's amazing. But that is the beautiful world that we live in.
Yeah, that's great.
So, as we, kind of wind down here, Jan, we typically, ask about, that kind of bigger picture vision. For you, obviously, you guys want to make beers that inspire you. You want to make beers that make your customers happy right here at the tap room in Rhino. What does success look like for our mutual friend? What's the big picture goal for you?
Yeah, we're slowly on our way to what we think is my business partners and I want as success, creating a place that our employees, feel secure in and enjoy working at, and they like the product that they're making and they like the people that they're working with. I feel like that's maybe one of our main goals. It's taken us a long time to get to that space, just kind of grinding it out and making beer and paying the bills and stuff, but we're able to kind of look forward a little bit and do that. We've just purchased our first
being a good company and good to your own employees,
exactly.
In addition to just what you make.
Which is important to us. We purchased our own canning line actually, which is coming end of April, we hope.
What'd you get?
We got a PS Angeles 6-head counterpressure filler.
Sure.
Yeah. And then we've got,
Crooked Stave's using one. Weldworks is using one.
Yeah. They're all the rage. Pint House has one, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just
that guy.
talking with them. Yeah.
Just kidding, Joe.
And then we're, finally able to purchase our own Anton Par suite for packaging and stuff like that as well. So just improving on quality and stuff as well.
We're going to have to make more beer then.
Yeah. So we're hopefully, we're going to produce some more beer here in this location for the time being. And then, if the demand, comes, maybe we do something a little bit larger, but that hasn't been planned at all yet.
Right.
Yeah. We're still, a little brewery, just doing what we can. Yeah. Trying to make great beer and then keep the people that work with us happy. Yeah.
Well, whatever you're doing, it's working pretty well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. G&D Chillers has set the mark for quality equipment you can rely on. Put the fossil-free power of raw malt into your beer. Think outside the puree box with Old Orchard's craft concentrate blends. Get detailed insight into your fermentations with Brew Monitor risk-free. Put SS Brewtech's advances to work in your brew house and sign your homebrew club up today for the 5-Star Chemicals Homebrew Club program. If you enjoy this podcast, we would love your support. Just go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button. Of course, many of the guests we talked to today or here on the podcast share additional insights and more in the pages of the magazine. In fact, I think we did a case study on our mutual friend in our brewing industry guide a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And if you are a subscriber to our Industry All Access, you can go access the entire back library of content all digitally for included in that subscription price. So, of course, if you want to learn more about our mutual friend, go get that Industry All Access subscription and check it out. Hey, we appreciate everyone supporting what we do. Of course, we have video classes and all sorts of other things that are a part of that too. Beerandbrewing.com. Click on that subscribe button. Jan, if people want to learn more about our mutual friend, where do they find you in the digital world and here in real life?
Yeah, on IG, OMF Beer, and then buyomfbeer.com. Yeah, that's where they can find us.
Or right down here on Larimer Street.
Or on Larimer Street,
in the River North District of Denver. It's been great talking with you, Jan. Appreciate you joining me for the podcast.
Thanks so much, Jamie. It's been an honor.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.